The clock struck midnight in the small, sleepy town of Ravenswood. Sergeant Emily Turner, a veteran of the force, sat in the dimly lit dispatch room, sipping her lukewarm coffee. The room was eerily quiet, the only sound being the hum of the old radio. Ravenswood was not known for its high crime rate, and most nights were uneventful, but this night felt different. As the clock ticked past 12, the radio crackled to life. Unit 12, we have a 1031 at 45 Maple Street. The dispatcher's voice was shaky, almost as if she had seen a ghost herself. Emily grabbed her deer and headed out into the foggy night. Maple Street was only a few blocks away, but the journey felt interminable. The fog clung to the town like a shroud, and the streetlights flickered ominously. When Emily arrived, she saw an abandoned house, its windows shattered, and the door ajar. She approached cautiously, her hand resting on her firearm. The interior of the house was even more foreboding than the outside. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling like spectral curtains. Emily's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing broken furniture and strange symbols scrawled on the walls. The air was thick with the smell of decay. As she moved deeper into the house, she heard a faint whispering. Her heart pounded in her chest as she followed the sound to a door at the end of the hallway. She pushed it open, revealing a room bathed in a sickly green light. In the center of the room was a large, ancient-looking book, its pages turning on their own. Emily approached the book, feeling an inexplicable compulsion to read it. The pages were filled with cryptic symbols and unsettling illustrations. As she read, the whispering grew louder, and she realized it was coming from the book itself. The words seemed to crawl off the page and into her mind, filling her with a sense of dread. Suddenly, the room grew cold, and Emily could see her breath in the air. The book slammed shut, and she felt a presence behind her. She turned to see a figure standing in the doorway, its eyes glowing with an unholy light. Emily tried to radio for backup, but her radio was dead. The figure advanced towards her, and she fired her weapon. The bullets passed through it, as if it were made of smoke. It let out a chilling laugh, and Emily knew she was dealing with something beyond the realm of the living. The figure spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "You have read the book. Now you are bound to it," it said. "You cannot escape the darkness that follows." Emily fled the house, her mind racing. She knew she had to find a way to break the curse before it consumed her. She returned to the station, but the dispatcher was gone, leaving only a hastily scribbled note. The darkness is spreading. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen in Ravenswood. People reported seeing shadowy figures in their homes, and there were unexplained disappearances. Emily was haunted by nightmares, and she could feel the darkness closing in on her. She spent her days researching the book and trying to find a way to destroy it. She learned that it was an ancient tome, said to be written by a cult that worshipped dark forces. The only way to break the curse was to return the book to its rightful place in the catacombs beneath Ravenswood. Emily gathered her courage and descended into the catacombs, the book clutched tightly in her hands. The air was thick with the stench of death, and the walls were lined with bones. She could hear the whispers growing louder as she ventured deeper into the darkness. Finally, she reached a chamber at the heart of the catacombs. In the center of the room was an altar, and she placed the book upon it. The ground shook, and she could feel the presence of the dark forces closing in on her. With a final, desperate effort, she recited the incantation she had found in her research. The room was filled with a blinding light, and the whispers turned into screams. The book burst into flames, and the darkness was banished. Months passed, and life in Ravenswood seemed to regain its usual tranquility. Yet, Sergeant Emily Turner couldn't shake the lingering sense of unease. Her nights were still plagued by nightmares, shadows that seemed to creep and crawl at the edges of her vision. The darkness had left its mark on her soul. One particularly cold evening, as Emily patrolled the quiet streets, she received an urgent call. Unit 12. We have reports of strange noises coming from the old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The dispatcher's voice crackled through her radio. Emily's heart sank. The warehouse had a sinister reputation, and she feared what might await her there. The warehouse loomed before her, an imposing structure of rusted metal and broken windows. Emily approached cautiously, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air inside was musty and oppressive, filled with the scent of decay. As she explored the maze-like corridors, she heard a faint, rhythmic tapping echoing through the halls. Following the sound, she found herself in a large open space, filled with old machinery and debris. In the center of the room stood a figure, shrouded in darkness. It turned to face her, its eyes glowing with the same unholy light she had seen before. "You thought you could escape the darkness?" it hissed. "It will always find you." Emily stood her ground, determination stealing her resolve. She knew she had to confront the darkness once and for all. Drawing upon the knowledge she had gained from her research, she began to recite an incantation. The figure writhed and shrieked, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. But the darkness was not so easily banished. Shadows crept along the walls, closing in on Emily. She could feel their cold touch, sapping her strength. Desperate, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small vial of holy water she had kept for such an occasion. She hurled it at the figure, the water sizzling as it made contact. The figure let out a piercing scream, its form dissolving into smoke. The shadows recoiled, retreating into the corners of the room. Emily fell to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. She had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The town of Ravenswood began to heal, its residents slowly forgetting the horrors that had plagued them. Emily continued her work as a sergeant, but she was forever changed by her experiences. She had learned that darkness could never be truly eradicated, only held at bay. Emily dedicated herself to protecting the town from any future threats, vowing to never let the darkness take hold again. She became a beacon of hope for the people of Ravenswood, a symbol of resilience in the face of unimaginable terror. Years later, on a quiet night, much like the one when it all began, Emily sat in the dispatch room, a sense of calm washing over her. The clock struck midnight, and she took a deep breath, knowing that she had faced the darkness and emerged stronger for it. As she looked out into the night, she couldn't help but smile. The darkness would always be there, lurking in the shadows. But so would she, a watchful guardian, ever vigilant, ready to protect her town from whatever horrors lay ahead.